All right, Chapter 4 of Slaughterhouse 5 by Vonnegut. Billy Pilgrim could not sleep on his daughter's wedding night. He was 44. The wedding had taken place that afternoon in a gaily striped tent in Billy's backyard. The stripes were orange and black. Billy and his wife, Valencia, nestled like spoons in their big double bed. They were jiggled by magic fingers. Valencia didn't need to be jiggled to sleep. Valencia was snoring like a bandsaw. The poor woman didn't have ovaries or a uterus anymore. They had been removed by a surgeon, by one of Billy's partners at the new Holiday Inn. There was a full moon. Billy got up out of bed in the moonlight. He felt spooky and luminous, felt as though he were wrapped in cool fur that was full of static electricity. He looked down at his bare feet. They were ivory and blue. Billy now shuffled down his upstairs hallway, knowing he was about to be kidnapped by a flying saucer. The hallway was zebra-striped with darkness and moonlight. The moonlight came into the hallway through the doorways of the empty rooms of Billy's two children no more. They were gone forever. Billy was guided by dread and the lack of dread. Dread told him when to stop. Lack of it told him when to move again. He stopped. He went into his daughter's room. Her drawers were dumped. Her closet was empty. Heaped in the middle of her room were all the possessions she could not take on a honeymoon. She had a princess telephone extension all her own on her windowsill. Its tiny nightlight stared at Billy, and then it rang. Billy answered. There was a drunk on the other end. Billy could almost smell his breath. Mustard gas and roses. It was a wrong number. Billy hung up. There was a soft drink bottle in the windowsill. Its label boasted that it contained no nourishment whatsoever. Billy Pilgrim padded downstairs on his blue and ivory feet. He went into the kitchen, where the moonlight called his attention to a half bottle of champagne on the kitchen table, all that was left from the reception in the tent. Somebody had stoppered it again. "Drink me," it seemed to say. So Billy uncorked it with his thumbs. It didn't make a pop. The champagne was dead. So it goes. Billy looked at the clock on the gas stove. He had an hour to kill before the saucer came. He went into the living room, swinging the bottle like a dinner bell, turned on the television. He came slightly unstuck in time, saw the late movie backwards, then forwards again. It was a movie about American bombers in the Second World War, and the gallant men who flew them. Seen backwards by Billy, the story went like this. American planes, full of holes and wounded men and corpses, took off backwards from an airfield in England. Over France, for few German fighters flew at them backwards, sucked bullets and shell fragments from some of the planes and crewmen. They did the same for the wrecked American bombers on the ground, and those planes flew back upwards to join the formation. The formation flew backwards over a German city that was in flames. The bombers opened their bomb bay doors, exerted a miraculous magnetism which shrunk the fires and gathered them into cylindrical steel containers and lifted the containers into the bellies of the planes. The containers were stored neatly in racks. The Germans below had miraculous devices of their own, which were long steel tubes. They used them to suck more fragments from the crewmen and planes. But there were still a few wounded Americans, though, and some of the bombers were in bad repair. Over France, though, German fighters came up again and made everything and everybody as good as new. When the bombers got back to their base, the steel cylinders were taken from the racks and shipped back to the United States of America, where factories were operating night and day, dismantling the cylinders, separating the dangerous contents into minerals. Touchingly, it was mainly women who did this work. The minerals were then shipped to specialists in remote areas. It was their business to put them into the ground, to hide them cleverly, so they would never hurt anybody ever again. The American flyers turned in their uniforms, became high school kids, and Hitler turned into a baby, Billy Pilgrim supposed. That wasn't in the movie, Billy was extrapolating. Everybody turned into a baby, and all humanity, without exception, conspired biologically to produce two perfect people named Adam and Eve, he supposed. Billy saw the war movies backwards, then forwards, and then it was time to go out into his backyard to meet the flying saucer. Out he went, his blue and ivory feet crushing the wet salad of the lawn. He stopped, took a swig of the dead champagne. It was like 7-Up. He would not raise his eyes to the sky, though he knew there would be a flying saucer from Trafalgar up there. He would see it soon enough, inside and out, and he would see, too, where it came from soon enough. Soon enough. Overhead, he heard the cry of what might have been a melodious owl, but it wasn't a melodious owl. It was a flying saucer from Trafalgar, navigating in both space and time, therefore seeming to Billy Pilgrim to have come from nowhere at all at once. Somewhere, a big dog barked. The saucer was 100 feet in diameter, with portholes all around its rim. The light from the portholes was a pulsing purple. The only noise it made was the owl sound. It came down to hover over Billy and enclose him in a cylinder of pulsing purple light. Now there was the sound of a seeming kiss on an airtight hatch in the bottom of the saucer. Was opened. Down snaked a ladder that was outlined in pretty lights like a Ferris wheel. Leave her alone, little Leon. Freaking frack. Billy's will was paralyzed by a zap gun aimed at him from one of the portholes. It became imperative that he take hold of the bottom rung of the sinuous ladder, which he did. The rung was electrified so that Billy's hands locked onto it hard. He was hauled into the airlock, and machinery closed the bottom door. Only then did the ladder, wound onto a reel in the airlock, let him go. Only then did Billy's brain start working again. There were two peepholes inside the airlock, with yellow eyes pressed to them. There was a speaker on the wall. The Trafalmadorians had no voice boxes. They communicated telepathically. They were able to talk to Billy by means of a computer and a sort of electric organ which made every earthling's speech sound. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Pilgrim," said the loudspeaker. "Any questions?" Billy licked his lips, thought a while, and inquired at last, "Why me?" "That is a very earthling question to ask, Mr. Pilgrim. Why you? Why us, for that matter? Why anything? Because the moment simply is. Have you ever seen bugs trapped in amber?" Yes, Billy, in fact, had a paperweight in his office, which was a blob of polished amber with 3 ladybugs embedded in it. "Well, here we are, Mr. Pilgrim, trapped in the amber of the moment. There is no why." Come on, cats, knock it off. They introduced an anesthetic into Billy's atmosphere now, put him to sleep. They carried him to a cabin where he was strapped to a yellow Barcalounger, which they had stolen from a Sears Roebuck warehouse. They told of the saucer. The hold of the saucer was crammed. Come on now! You girls are so dramatic. All right, let's try that again. The hold of the saucer was crammed with other stolen merchandise, which would be used to furnish Billy's artificial habitat and a zoo on Trafalgar. The terrific acceleration of the saucer as it left Earth twisted Billy's slumbering body, distorted his face, dislodged him in time, and sent him back to the war. When he regained consciousness, he wasn't on the flying saucer. He was in a boxcar crossing Germany again. Some people were rising from the floor of the car, and others were lying down. Billy planned to lie down, too. It would be lovely to sleep. It was black in the car, and black outside the car, which seemed to be going about 2 miles an hour. The car never seemed to go any faster than that. It was a long time between clicks, between joints in the track. There would be a click, and then a year would go by, and then there would be another click. The train often stopped to let really important trains bawl and hurtle by. Another thing it did was stop on sidings near prisons, leaving a few cars there. It was creeping across all of Germany, growing shorter all the time. And Billy let himself down oh so gradually now, hanging on to the diagonal cross brace in the corner, in order to make himself nearly weightless to those he was joining on the floor. He knew it was important that he make himself nearly ghost-like when lying down. He had forgotten why, but a reminder soon came. "Pilgrim," said a person he was about to nestle with. "Is that you?" Billy didn't say anything, but nestled very politely, closed his eyes. "God damn it," said the person. "That is you, isn't it?" And then he sat up and explored Billy rudely with his hands. "It's you, all right. Get the hell out of here." Now Billy sat up too, wretched, close to tears. "Get out of here. I want to sleep." "Shut up," said somebody else. "I'll shut up when Pilgrim gets away from here." So Billy stood up again, clutching the cross brace. "Where can I sleep?" he said quietly. "Not with me. Not with me, you son of a bitch," said somebody else. "You yell and you kick." "I do?" "You're goddamn right you do, and whimper." "I do?" "Get the hell away from here, Pilgrim." And now there was an acrimonious madrigal, with parts sung in all quarters of the car. Nearly everybody, seemingly, had an atrocity story of something Billy Pilgrim had done to him in his sleep. Everybody told Billy Pilgrim to keep the hell away. So Billy Pilgrim had to sleep standing up or not sleep at all. And food had stopped coming in through the ventilators, and the days and nights were colder all the time. On the 8th day, the 40-year-old hobo said to Billy, "This ain't bad. I could really be comfortable anywhere." "You can?" said Billy. On the 9th day, the hobo died. So it goes. His last words were, "You think this is bad? This ain't bad." There was something about death in the 9th day. There was a death on the 9th day in the car ahead of Billy's, too. Roland Weary died of gangrene that had started in his mangled feet. So it goes. Weary, in his nearly continuous delirium, told again and again of the 3 musketeers, acknowledged that he was dying, gave many messages to be delivered to his family in Pittsburgh. Above all, he wanted to be avenged. So he said again and again in the name of the person who had killed him. Everyone on the car learned the lesson well. "Who killed me?" he would ask, and everybody knew the answer, which was this: "Billy Pilgrim." Listen, on the 10th night, the peg was pulled out of the hasp on Billy's boxcar, and the door was opened. Billy Pilgrim was lying at an angle on the corner brace, self-crucified, holding himself there with a blue and ivory claw hooked over the sill of the ventilator. Billy coughed when the door was open, and when he coughed, he shit thin gruel. This was in accordance with the 3rd law of motion, according to Sir Isaac Newton. The law tells us that for every action there is an opposite reaction. which is equal and opposite in any direction. This can be useful in rocketry. The train had arrived on a siding by a prison which was originally constructed as an extermination camp for Russian prisoners of war. The guards peeked inside Billy's car owlishly, cooed calmingly. They had never dealt with Americans before, but they surely understood this general sort of freight. They knew that it was essentially a liquid which could be induced to flow slowly toward cooking and light. It was night time. The only light outside came from a single bulb which hung from a pole, high and far away. All was quiet outside, except for the guards, who cooed like doves, and the liquid began to flow. Gobs of it built up in the doorway, plopped to the ground. Billy was next to last human being to reach the door. The hobo was last. The hobo could not flow, could not plop. He wasn't liquid anymore. He was stone. So it goes. Billy didn't want to drop from the car to the ground. He sincerely believed that he would shatter like glass. So the guards helped him down, cooing still. They set him down facing the train. It was such a dinky train now. There was a locomotive, a tender, and 3 little boxcars. The last boxcar was the railroad's guards' heaven on wheels. Again, in that heaven on wheels, the table was set, dinner was served. At the base of the pole from which the light bulb hung, there were 3 seeming haystacks. The Americans were wheeled and teased over to these 3 stacks, which weren't hay after all. They were overcoats taken from prisoners who were dead. So it goes. It was the guards' firmly expressed wish that every American without an overcoat should take one. The coats were cemented together with ice, so the guards used their bayonets as ice picks, pricking free collars and hems and sleeves and so on, then peeling off coats and handing them out at random. The coats were stiff and dome-shaped, having conformed to their piles. The coat that Billy Pilgrim got had been crumpled and frozen in such a way, and was so small, that it appeared to not be a coat, but a large black 3-cornered hat. There were gummy stains on it, too, like crankcase casing drainings, or old strawberry jam. There seemed to be a dead, furry animal frozen to it. The animal was in fact the coat's fur collar. Billy glanced dully at the coats of his neighbors. Their coats all had brass buttons, or tinsel, or piping, or numbers, or stripes, or eagles, or moons, or stars dancing from them. They were soldiers' coats. Billy was the only one who had a coat from a dead civilian. So it goes. And Billy and the rest were encouraged to shuffle around like their dinky train into the prison camp. There wasn't anything warm or lively to attract them, merely long, narrow sleds by the thousands with no lights inside, or narrow sheds. Somewhere a dog barked. With the help of fear and echoes and winter silences, that dog had a voice like a big bronze gong. Billy and the rest were wooed through the gate after gate. Billy saw his first Russian. The man was all alone in the night, a rag bag with a round, flat face that glowed like radium dial. Billy passed within a yard of him. There was barbed wire between them. The Russian... You trying to get up, baby? I'm just scratching. Alright. The Russian did not wave or speak, but he looked directly into Billy's soul with sweet hopefulness, as though Billy might have good news for him, news he might be too stupid to understand, but good news all the same. Billy blacked out as he walked through gate after gate. He came to and what he thought might be a building on Trafalgar. It was shrilly lit and lined with white tiles. It was on Earth, though, and it was a delousing station through which all new prisoners had to pass. Billy did as he was told and took off his clothes. That was the first thing they told him to do on Trafalmador, too. A German measured Billy's upper right arm with his thumb and forefinger, asked a companion what sort of army would send a weakling like that to the front. They looked at other American bodies now, pointed out a lot more that were nearly as bad as Billy's. One of the best bodies belonged to the oldest American by far, a high school teacher from Indianapolis. His name was Edgar Derby. He hadn't been in Billy's boxcar. He'd been in Roland Weary's car, had cradled Weary's head while he died. So it goes. Derby was 44 years old. He was so old he had a son who was a Marine in the Pacific theater of the war. Derby had pulled political wires to get into the Army at his age. The subject he had taught at Indianapolis was contemporary problems in Western civilization. He also coached the tennis team and took very good care of his body. Derby's son would survive the war. Derby wouldn't. That good body of his would be filled with holes by a firing squad in Dresden in 68 days. So it goes. The worst American body wasn't Billy's. The worst body belonged to a car thief from Cicero, Illinois. His name was Paul Lazaro. He was tiny, and not only were his bones and teeth rotten, but his skin was disgusting. Lazaro was a polka-dotted all over with dime-sized scars. He had many plagues of boils. Lazaro, too, had been on Roland Weary's boxcar, and had given his word of honor to Weary that he would find some way to make Billy Pilgrim pay for Weary's death. He was looking around now, wondering which naked human being was Billy. The naked Americans took their places under many shower heads along a white-tiled wall. There were no faucets to control. They could only wait for whatever was coming. Their penises were shriveled and their balls were retracted. Reproduction was not the main business of the evening. An unseen hand turned a master valve. Out of the shower heads gushed scalding rain. The rain was a blowtorch that did not warm. It jazzed and jangled Billy's skin without thawing the ice in the marrow of his long bones. The American's clothes were meanwhile passing through poison gas. Body lice and bacteria and fleas were dying by the billions. So it goes. And Billy zoomed back in time to his infancy. He was a baby who had just been bathed by his mother. Now his mother wrapped him in a towel, carried him into a rosy room that was filled with sunshine. She unwrapped him, laid him on the tickling towel, powdered him between his legs, joked with him, patted his little jelly belly. Her palm was on his little jelly belly, made potching sounds. Billy gurgled and cooed. And then Billy was a middle-aged optometrist again, playing hackers' golf this time, on a blazing summer Sunday morning. Billy never went to church anymore. He was hacking with 3 other optometrists. Billy was on the green in 7 strokes, and it was his turn to putt. It was an 8-foot putt, and he made it. He bent over to take the ball out of the cup, and the sun went behind a cloud. Billy was momentarily dizzy. When he recovered, he wasn't on the golf course anymore. He was strapped to a yellow contour chair in a white chamber aboard a flying saucer, which was bound for Trafalmador. "Where am I?" said Billy Pilgrim. "Trapped in another blob of amber, Mr. Pilgrim. We are where we have to be just now. 300 million miles from Earth, bound for a time warp, which will get us to Trafalmador in hours rather than centuries." How did I get here? It would be another Earthling. It would take another Earthling to explain it to you. Earthlings are the great explainers, explaining why this event is structured as it is, telling how other events may be achieved or avoided. I am a Trifalmadorian, seeing all time as you might see a stretch of the Rocky Mountains. All time is all time. It does not change. It does not lend itself to warnings or explanations. It simply is. Take it moment by moment, and you will find that we are all, as I've said before, bugs in amber. You sound to me as though you don't believe in free will, said Billy Pilgrim. If I hadn't spent so much time studying earthlings, said the Trifalmadorian, I wouldn't have any idea what was meant by free will. I visited 31 inhabited planets in the universe, and I have studied reports of 100 more. Only on Earth is there any talk of free will. That is the end of chapter 4.